All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm extremely excited to have Charlotte Milda here with me on the show. Charlotte is an intuitive soul contract reader, spiritual teacher, mentor, and host of the brand new Soul Architect podcast. It's truly a pleasure to meet you again for the first time, Charlotte. Welcome to the show.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Brandon.
Yes, likewise, likewise. So I'm going to start off with my cliche opening question. It is this: You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
Ooh, I love this. Okay, so I am deeply passionate about guiding individuals back home to themselves, to their soul, to their authentic power, and through remembering who they are, what they're here to do, how can they embrace their unique gifts and live a life of true purpose and passion through my unique approach of soul contract interpretation.
Amazing. Yeah, I came across your Instagram and I instantly was like, wow, I don't think I've ever had soul contract reading on the podcast, which was surprising. We connected. I instantly knew I wanted to have you on to hear all about it, and you even offered to do a little reading on me, which is always exciting and fun. But if you would just start us off with sharing a little bit about your backstory, like whatever feels relevant to share, of course.
Of course. So I grew up in a family that was always quite open and pretty left field in the way that both of my parents have been entrepreneurs, and we've always been or had the freedom to explore, I guess, just things outside the norm, which was such a gift. However, I did actually spend a big chunk of my childhood as a professional athlete, which was, to be honest, quite exhausting for me. It wasn't really in alignment, and I didn't actually have much time through the early years of my life to really ask, what is it that I wanted and what did I want to do? I was just training and school and just ticking the boxes each and every day. It got to the point where I got really exhausted and I really started to realize that that wasn't in alignment with me. So I left home pretty early on and kind of rebelled against anything and everyone that tried to tell me who I was and what I wanted to do. I went so far in the opposite direction and ran an absolute muck for a few years there, did a lot of travel, and I didn't realize at the time, but I was really trying to find myself. I never really felt like I fit in. I always felt quite alien and quite different and was very sensitive always. And that felt like a burden for most of the earlier years of my life. And so I was exploring a lot of things, but not realizing it. And then it wasn't until COVID kind of happened that I really got to have the space to explore the questions that I was trying to do through travel and experiences and making stories and things like that. I was one of the girls at the pub, many drinks in, having conversations with strangers and asking them, what is the meaning of life? What do you believe is the meaning of life? And people would look at me like I'm crazy, but that was always me. So I always had
Mm-hmm.
those questions there, but when COVID hit, I really was able to dive into that. And for me, conspiracy theories were my gateway drug. I discovered those,
UFOs
and
always deliver.
it really does, the catalyst for many. And my little truth seeker was like, wow, okay, this makes sense. This is why I didn't trust in everything that I heard. This is why not everything felt true to me. And although it probably wasn't the healthiest way to enter spirituality, because I really went down the rabbit hole pretty hard, it really opened up that extra push or that extra curiosity when it came to questioning everything. And over the next year or so, I just went so hard and fast into anything and everything that I could explore: spirituality, conspiracy theories, just hidden truths when it comes to life and the meaning of life. And I stumbled across soul contracts. Now, soul contracts are all about your name and the sound vibration of your name. And throughout my childhood and early years of life, I had navigated many name changes, initially name changes that my parents had chosen for me. And then after that, I had many nicknames. I was feeling really disconnected to my name at the time because I was going by a first name that someone else had really chosen for me. And I was carrying a surname of a father figure that was no longer in my life. And so I felt really
Mm,
disconnected to my name
wow.
at the time. And so when I discovered this system and it was all about names and the power of your name and how your name is quite literally manifesting your life in each and every moment, it just shook something in me and I was completely obsessed. I dove in head first. And I often say that it was the first time in my life where I felt like I was remembering something over learning something. It just felt like a
Hmm.
language that I had known and had previously explored. And all of a sudden, I was decoding contracts and reading for people. And I wasn't even using the book or the system as, I guess,
Wow.
guidance because it just came really naturally to me. And ever since, I've been in and out of the work, studying it through my own life experiences, taking some time away from service to kind of explore my own purpose and what it is that I want to do and how I want to go about it. But also, I have been deeply in a lot of readings and connecting with people and helping people reconnect and remember their own soul contracts. So it's became
Mm.
my language, my life, the way in which I feel and relate to the world. And yeah, I just am obsessed, if you couldn't tell, about what it is that I do.
Very cool. So I'm curious for you, like perceiving someone's soul contract. There's a system, there's a book that initially opened you up to it that I feel like I've heard about this book. Is the book called Soul Contracts?
Yeah, it's called Your Soul Contract Decoded. So there are a few
Mm,
soul contract books available. This one specifically speaks into the system and the decoding
got it.
process. So it
Got it.
really speaks into the system more so than just the concept of soul contracts.
Yeah. Interesting. Um, and so for you, there's obviously this whole process of doing it, um, and modality. And did you start having intuitive, you know, I feel like I saw on your Instagram talking about it where it is like you're connecting with your guides or the people's guides as well. Were you doing any of that prior to, go doing this work, or you started to go down the path and then all of a sudden that, sort of metaphysical side of things started to open up?
I think I started to have structure and an understanding of what I was experiencing through the soul contract. And what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that is I was always really sensitive to truths beyond what most people had
Mm-hmm.
access to. I was someone that would feel things in my body, whether it's through goosebumps or I would see things like shadow people and things like that. I was never very clear in what I was picking up, and it wasn't anything that looked like the typical mediumship or psychic gifts. And so I kind of dismissed it as a sensitivity ultimately. And then when it came to soul contracts, this provided a structure for me to be able to understand my own gifts and therefore explore them a little bit more, kind of tap into them a little bit more and trust that there was something underneath this sensitivity to truth that I always had. And when I started to trust in that, that's when I really started to see and experience and feel all of these gifts in just a greater capacity than previously because I was able to sense that something was there. And instead of going, oh, that's nothing and dismissing it, I was able to lean into it, knowing, I guess, that that was something that was true for me personally. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. It makes total sense. It's, the more whatever you're looking at looks back sort of thing, right? And so the more you're leaning in, it's like with me, the amount of like, um, we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, synchronicity, spiritual breadcrumbs, kind of psychic phenomenon, messages from spirit. It seems to amplify the more and of course it's interesting because people tap into these gifts in various ways. So, I mean, there are people who sit down and an alien sits on the end of their bed, and has that experience, or channeling, or what have you. And for me, I'll just have such incredibly layered, synchronicities. It gets very loud. So I think and I think, the more, once again, you're looking at it, the more you're paying attention to it, then it's like, oh, okay, you're ready to see more. You're ready to see more of the patterns and connect more deeply. And yeah, so it's interesting how that's a part of our evolution as our spirits evolve, as our path unfolds. These gifts
Mm.
kind of come along with it. It feels like.
Absolutely. And one of the most exciting things about my work is we can really lean into those gifts and provide a sense of understanding of what they look like for each individual. Because often when we think of, okay, spiritual gifts, we think of mediumship or those that are, psychics or clairvoyant or clairaudient, and we have all these labels. But for so many of us, it's actually a very unique individual gift and experience. And
Right.
that is why it's so beautiful with the soul contract, because we can really start to understand it through the soul contract structure and the lens that it kind of provides to your experience, that openness. And so you may not think you are gifted, or you may not see yourself as a very spiritually gifted person because you're not seeing aliens on the end of your bed, but that's absolutely not the case. Your gifts may just be coming through in a very different way with a
Right.
very different flavor. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, I talk about this. I wrote a book in 2021 called The Golden Key: Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance, and I talk a little bit about naming conventions as well in the book, and how it's so funny how a lot of times it's like hiding in plain sight in the name of the person. And I'm trying to remember who I used as an example. Oh, gosh, I'm going blank on a couple of the names. It'll come to me in a minute, but I'll take my own name. And this is what I originally messaged you. I saw you talking about names. And I'm like, oh, my initials are BBB. And I've always been such a doer. And I think that's encoded to remind me not to do and learn. And it's been a big part of my journey. Like, slow down, deep breaths, more meditation, less activity out there, accessing the quantum field. And, I even had someone reach out to me, um, who has my birthday. I have like a crazy synchronicity story with my birthday. It's like a 10-minute story, but he has my birthday and he reached out to me, goes, hey, I haven't talked to him in a few years, probably, or a year or so. He's like, hey, I need your help to turn my brand on, be a chum, help me out. He like literally broke down my whole name into asking what he was wanting. And I'm like, that's pretty clever.
That's
Help me turn my brand
cool.
on, be a chum.
Wow. Yeah, there you go. See, it's crazy how your name is just, it communicates so much to the world, right? And it communicates your
Mhm.
essence. It's your the packaging of your soul, essentially. I often say that same as when you're in the grocery store and you're walking down the aisle, you can't necessarily taste or see the product itself, but you can see the packaging, and it helps you choose how to connect, or whether you're going to buy or whether you're not going to buy. And our name very much is that. It communicates to the world the essence of our soul, and people can connect with you based off that kind of taste as to what it is that you can offer. And our name really allows us to connect with the world and to other people with that way. But most people are super unconscious of it, which is incredible and wild. And it blows my mind every day. But in saying that, I'm still a skeptic. I do this for a job. So
Yeah.
I still don't believe that so
Right,
much can
right,
be
right.
hidden in your name, because it's wild.
Yeah, it's just all so encoded. The encryption is so incredibly layered, and it's just like it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And yeah, it's wild. It's absolutely fascinating. And it's interesting too how what you're talking about, how changing your name. Here, I run a co-living event space in Los Angeles. It's kind of like a hub for conscious community. Um, and people all over, really all over the world, know it in like the kind of Burning Man sort of festival scene. And so yeah, in that our particular little niche community, so many people change their name to something other than their name. I mean, it's all, it's all the time. And then there's the people that are changing it constantly, and it's like, okay, who are you today? Like, what name do I have to remember? It's like, I've always wanted to just be me. And so I've never really had, even, I mean, I guess some people shorten my name, like family members and stuff will say Bran or whatever, but that's about it. So yeah, I'm curious to hear what you think about that. Like, because I don't, I mean, I'm speculating here what you might say, but I would imagine in some cases changing the name could lead to a better life path, perhaps. And other times it's like a deviant, taking them off course of what would be ideal for them. Is that a true assessment?
Yeah, let me explain it in this way. So, your birth name is like the cake, okay? It's who you are, and that does not change. Anytime you change your name, though, whether it's a legal name change or whether it's just a nickname, it creates a layer of icing on your cake. And
Hmm.
it really changes the experience of eating and tasting the cake. It adds a layer of flavor or infuses a set of flavor into your life path. Now, that layer of icing can be a positive, a neutral, or a negative match to your cake. Okay, not all flavors are going to work on that particular cake that is you.
Hmm.
Now, the layer of icing often is the best bit of the cake, right? Sometimes it really makes the experience
Hmm.
better. So you can absolutely change your name and it can really infuse a set of flavor into your life that really helps you move towards your purpose and really accelerates your life path. And so this is a name optimization. Essentially, this is choosing a name that is helping you live a life closer to your purpose and move through your karmic blocks quicker than without that layer of icing. It's really enhancing your experience. However, when people have resistance towards taking on a name or their name is changed for them, or they get married, for instance, and they're like, oh, I don't really want to take my partner's name, but I feel like I should do this, that layer of icing may not be very positive. It may have a negative impact on the cake. It may not be a very good flavor match. And it can make people feel very lost and, I guess, off center because all of a sudden they have this flavor of experiences coming into their life that aren't supportive for what they're here to do. So
Hmm.
everyone has a different experience, and every layer of flavor on every cake is very different. However, when someone is choosing a different name every week or changing their name time and time
Hmm.
again, I often see this for people that are, how do I put this? There is a lack of integration. Okay. There is
Struggling
parts
with
of
their identity.
themselves. Yeah. They're trying to find themselves through the naming process. And when you create many names and you have lots of names that you go by, which I found myself in having many name changes in the first literally 15 years of my life, it gets really abstract. And all of a sudden, you have all of this flavor. I mean, I don't know any good cakes that have like 4 or 5 or 6 layers of icing on them, right? It really makes the experience very
Right. Right.
confusing. Yeah, so much flavor, so
Right.
much experience. And when it comes to being really clear in what you're here to do and your sense of direction, it's very difficult to do that when you have all of these flavors infused into your life path, manifesting through your experiences. So often when I see people changing their name time and time again, they're trying to find a layer of icing that works. But in doing so, they're complicating things, they're adding a very abstract, very confusing kind of soup of frequency to their life. And they really just need to strip it back. We need to peel some layers of icing off, either come back to their core or just really stick an anchor with one, because that's going to help you be sure of yourself and know what direction you're going in.
Mm, yeah, it makes so much sense. And I've actually talked about this before, so it was really intriguing to me when I saw that was sort of what you were honing in on. Because yeah, it just like everything is frequency, vibration, and what more to represent you and your soul contract and your trajectory than your name. And it's of course cool to look at all these different modalities too around, like I don't know if you're familiar with like gene keys or destiny cards, or my former partner has gone really deep down the destiny card path, which is the 52 playing cards, and that's her whole thing. And it's really fascinating as you look at all these different modalities and just kind of synthesize our human design. you know um, it's just there's so much information out there to kind of help decode who you are. But something as foundational as the name, the vibrational sound that represents you, it seems like the core of everything.
Yeah, it's your first point of your individual identity, right? When you first come here, it's like an imprint and it's telling the world who you are. It's the first way in which you can communicate who you are to the world. That alongside, your location and astrology and things like that, it's kind of like the blueprint is the imprint of you as a unique soul, an individual, and it holds a significant vibration. And often too, off the back of that, when we hear the stories of how we receive our names or how our names come through or how our names are come into being what is on the birth certificate ultimately, they're often so magical and so spiritual, those stories, even for those parents that aren't very magical or spiritual. And it's so interesting how that's such an intuitive act for the most part when it comes to naming, yet most parents aren't aware of what they're actually doing when they're choosing that name. And I think it's important to, when you're aware of this and aware of the power of names, it's easy to want to control and protect and choose a quote unquote good name. There's no such thing. But it's really important for people to be very receptive and open to what feels like the right name that represents that soul and the essence of this individual and what it is that they want to do in this lifetime. And that comes to you because your soul communicates your name to your parents or anyone else that has influence in your
Mm-hmm.
name. So it's quite a magical process, really, but very few people are aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've often thought the idea, like everyone with the name Brandon, for example, there's some energetic thread of connectivity. I mean, I always think in terms of what is my connection to this particular soul, whoever's, you think about it, out of what, 7, 8 billion people on the planet, for us to have and share a moment like this is very unlikely, statistically. So it's like, I had someone on the show one time who could perceive all these connections supposedly, and he was like, "Oh, Brendan, like 75% of the people on your podcast that you ever interview, you have significant past life interactions with, and like another 28%, he had exact numbers, are like mild." And so I always think in those terms, whoever I bump up against, or if I meet someone with my name, it's like, oh, we share some energetic thread there. And it's fascinating to think about that as well. I mean, would you agree that everyone with the name Charlotte has some level of connectivity to you?
I want to speak into something that you just shared, though, with that past lives for
Mm-hmm.
you, because your
Mm-hmm.
soul contract specifically, more so than most, your lifetime is about really integrating past life influence and
Mm.
exploring past life connections, whether it's through other people or locations for you, more so than most. And so I definitely would agree with who you had on your podcast in the sense that a lot of what you're here to journey is reconnecting with people and
Feel it.
lessons and locations from previous lifetimes. So I'm not surprised at all to hear that your podcast has been a really beautiful way for you to do that. So it's really, really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, even like I said, the place that I live, we call it the Mystic Manor. It's a co-living event space. 10 of us live here. It's a big property. And everyone who moves in, I feel like I have significant karma with them. Like, oh my gosh, I can feel the connection between you and my sister. You want to move in? Oh, your name is Anna. Like I had a girlfriend named Anna. Oh, you're definitely connected to my sister. I can feel that. Like, what's your birthday? Oh, March 1st. Yeah, of course, that's her birthday. The guy across the hall from Virginia, a ginger like my siblings, that's where I'm originally from. It's like on and on. The guy who reached out about, hey, help me turn my brand on, be a chum. His birthday is July 28th. And, it's my dad's birthday, my grandmother's birthday, my it's my great grandmother's birthday. Great died on that day. I write about my best friend and business partner that betrayed me in my book. Kind of the villain in my hero's journey tale, his baby mama and grandmother, July 28th. Then I met a soulmate on July 28th, 2012. And her boyfriend before me, his name was Anson, and all my relatives with that birthday are from Anson, North Carolina, a little town outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, and just outside. That's the closest big city. But her Anson committed suicide. Guess what day? July 28th. And it's on and on. So this guy that I was just talking about, he moved in here, and it was like my shadow moved in. Like, it's like my shadow with some mental health stuff going on. It was very tumultuous. I almost shut the whole place down over him. And then the day I kind of passed the test and cleared the karma, it felt like, and got him to leave without it escalating more than it already had. It was like a tornado. I live in Los Angeles. We don't get tornadoes. It was like the people that were here were like, Brandon, like we were scared the house was going to blow down. And like, um, all the stuff blew off my balcony. I've lived here 5 years. Only one time has it happened within an hour of him leaving, and me like, and with that birthday stuff, that's like half of it. I don't even tell it all anymore. It's so incredibly long, like the amount of layers of synchronicity with it. So yeah, it's so I even think with that too. I mean, just like names, it's like I've thought before, like, oh, it would be cool to have a Burning Man camp where you can only stay if you have the birthday July 28th. I just want to explore the connections. Like, who are you? How do I know? What have we done?
That's
But
hilarious. Oh my goodness. Because when I sat with your chart earlier this morning, I could feel significant past life and ancestral influence in your chart. And it was almost like, how do I describe this? It was almost like you would as you incarnated in this lifetime, it's almost like you grabbed a hold of all of these previous lifetimes and you brought them with you. But what they feel like in this lifetime is like a lot of influence, and that comes up in fears and phobias and anxieties and like these stories or these sensations or synchronicities. And a lot of what you're here to explore as a part of your greatest lesson is coming into a solution or a decision around who are you in this lifetime, despite all of the influence in which you're experiencing from previous lifetimes and from
well,
all of these people and places kind of coming together and making you question, who am I? What does this mean for me? And really coming into a decision around that, which I'm sure you've had times where that's been very disorientating and very confusing. And you've kind of gone, why do I feel so angry, or why do I feel so repelled by this person, or why is there deep love and connection here when it doesn't logically make
yeah,
sense? So that's that very experience, all these influences that to a human are like, what's going on here? Why do I feel this way? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've had that happen quite a bit. Like meeting a future partner and being like, oh my God, I don't know how I know that's my future partner. And then a year and a half later, like I break up with one and she moves to town from 4 hours away and we're together for 3 years. Like, or meeting someone being like, I have significant past life with that person. I can feel the karmic thread. I don't know why I don't like him, and then we have a rub years later and then it heals and then we become friends. And it's just like, it's clockwork. I've gotten so sensitive to it too. And then, of course, I always try and keep a healthy check and balance with it, though, too. It's like, okay, I don't want to be like completely like every time I question myself, though, most of the time I end up getting validated through, so at this point, I'm just like, okay, like I am definitely tapping in and, feeling, and I seem to be getting more sensitive, where things are coming through dreams and my grandfather coming through in a dream and introducing me to dead people that then have this big impact and lead to my child, getting an acting role and so much wild stuff, it's really magical.
Wow, wow. That's it's so beautiful to hear you speak about it, because for a lot of those with this particular frequency, it's actually represented by the 18-9 combination in the soul contract. And it's quite debilitating because it's often very misunderstood. It's very disorientating.
Mm,
And one of the greatest challenges, is you just spoke into it briefly, is being present with all of this influence at play. It's very easy for the 18-9s to be very future focused, be looking at like what's to come and not be in the present moment. And also, it's very common for them to be so stuck in the past in a lot of shame and guilt over things they've previously done, or even this immense amount of shame and guilt from past lives that you can't quite sense, that are keeping you stuck
mm,
from moving forward. And so,
wow.
being present and being here and being able to integrate all of that influence from that place is like essentially a lot of your challenge and your greatest lesson in this lifetime. So
Wow.
it's really beautiful to hear you so aware of where you're at and your ability to kind of navigate that, because it's not always easy for some.
Yeah. Well, I guess we've kind of segued into talking about my chart without officially going there. But so it's an 18-9, you said, is the interesting. Um, yeah, I definitely can relate to all that. I've always been like so visionary about like, we're going this direction. Here's where, and I can be so nostalgic and have a lot of, even with, recent relationship split, it's the most I've ever had regret over how I did or didn't show up, and I've always been super resilient. And this time it really hit me different, where I like it was very much like I'll say like a tower card moment in tarot, or, Dark Night of the Soul, a little bit of like looking at all my patterns and like how you know, I've always been so an avoidant attachment style. And what have I done that's continued to perpetuate the same sort of thing happening? And which is really good, because I feel like it was the hardest, but I've come out of it like, oh, this has really affected me in what will be a positive way, as I move forward, but not easy. So yeah, I definitely can look back. And I have a lot of Cancer in my chart too, so I'm like very nostalgic and very like sensitive, and so yeah. But those are definitely the two things. It's like past, lots of energy; future, crazy amounts of energy; and meanwhile, BBB, get here now, because this is where I need to be, right? So definitely the challenge. You're spot on with that.
Yeah, it's such a unique one. The 18-9, it's very rare. I mean, your entire chart is very rare, which I'm sure comes as no surprise to you in a lot of ways. But
Mm.
uh, it's the 18-9s really like their full circle moments, because they're here to close chapters and to come into solution and come into decision around who they are. And so that nostalgia is because there's an element of unfinished business, or
Mm.
like you haven't come into that place of wholeness after experiencing certain things, whether it be in this lifetime or previous lifetimes. And a huge part of your purpose in this lifetime is to come in that full circle and to close those chapters, to come into that solution, that decision. And it can be really difficult to do so, especially when those emotions, either from the past or in the future, are really urgent and overwhelming. And, regret and shame and guilt from the past, which is quite common for the 18-9s, or that sense of
Mm.
like, I need to get to the future. I need to have it done and complete. And it's that do, like always future focused, very goal orientated as well. And just being, which is interesting because we spoke about the BBB, is the challenge for you, so much so you've got so much energy that's wanting to come through in this lifetime, that just simply being and taking a deep breath and having 2 feet on the ground and being in your body is the greatest lesson, which is very unique in itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So, yeah, that all completely resonates. Um, so, yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else in particular that comes up that you're shown or want to share, since we kind of ended up just going into it?
Yeah, I can't help myself, sorry.
I
uh,
think I contributed.
no,
I
it's
think it
so
was
fine.
a
It's just
team effort.
you asked me to look at your chart, and I'm like, yeah, we're in there. We're in your energy now. Yes, absolutely. So there's a lot of your chart that is very unique. I wanted to ask you, because you have a very strong thread of power. Okay, power is the strongest theme in your chart in this lifetime. And essentially what it felt like to me was very much a dance with power, with your own personal power, with your relationship with power, with the way in which you perceive power. It's both your gift, but it's also your karma. It's
Hmm.
everywhere for you. And so I was more so curious, what is your relationship to your own power, to power in general? I want to hear how you perceive that energy, how you relate to that energy.
Well, this morning I did a guided meditation on tapping into power. Um, and yeah, it's, because I am so tapped into, my higher purpose and soul, and get so many messages in various ways. And a lot of it has to do with like this, like, okay, this lifetime, you're going to step into a tremendous amount of power. And then having a lot of like a dance with it. Me from my friend's couch to, you know, an Inc. fastest growing private company with 100 plus employees to here's a $30 million buyout. Oh, never mind. Within 12 hours of that, it implodes and it disintegrates the deal. And then your best friend betrays you. And then it's been this like roller coaster of, I've always felt like since I was little, like, oh, I'm definitely going to be a billionaire. Like, duh. Like it's always felt like that. And I'm not there now. I've had like these real pushes of power, but then retraction. It's, yeah, trying to find myself through it. And then, um, even in the last few years has been the least inspiration I've always been so driven and inspired. And the last few years have been really challenging because I wasn't feeling that as much. And it's like, oh my gosh, if I'm not feeling super empowered and inspired, who am I? Like, who is this character? I don't even know him if he's not that, And so I've had to really like look at that. Well, what is my relationship to power? And because I haven't achieved as much in some regards, you know, as I think I should, like, well, what does that mean? Is all of your worth, tied to that? Are you worthy if you're not the number 3 podcast in the world now, or you haven't achieved, a gazillion, figure bank account? Like, then where's your worth? And it's been a real journey for me to like, and I feel like I've, it's been a slow and steady process of growth, but I really feel like I'm landing where I don't need the external validation. I don't need to have all those things. I think I still will, uh, but because I don't need it, and so I do feel like my whole life's been a setup, and like the next chapter is like, okay, we're going to really go to another level of everything that you've always known would come, but you can have it because you no longer need it. And it's not coming from a place of like, am I worthy because I produced and did enough? Did I show you that I'm a genius and amazing? And it's like, no, it's not. Coming from that place is not it. It's you got to find it within yourself, regardless of what's happening out there. And it's been I was always very self-confident and all those things, but it's like getting in the crevices, the little doubts, the little voices, the little insecurities, and I think that will be, a dance that we all kind of go through. I think if you're still alive because there's more growth to be had here, or you leave, and so, but I do feel like I've made a lot of progress, especially the last 6 months have been probably the most intense growth portal, of my life. And so I feel like I'm ready to really inherit the power that, up until now has been like literally like a carrot that's like, oh, here's a taste. Oh, take away. Oh, I mean, can you imagine going from like getting guided in very dramatic fashion to create a music platform in 2009, then I need to manifest more money to do this right, and then, with nothing, it, doing like 12 million a year in revenue and all these employees, and okay, here's the big buyout so you can go do the thing properly. That's why I set out to do it. And then within 12 hours of an offer for $30 million, you lose it all because, a partnership in the travel space where $2 billion companies pushed us out, and it blew the whole deal up. And then my friend betrayed me, and, and then I write about it in my book. Like, he's the, aware enough that like he's the villain in my hero's journey tale, but actually, his child's mother and his grandmother, July 28th. It's like he's I had Evan Alexander on the show. I don't know if you know who he is. He wrote a big book, Proof of Heaven, and he was telling me how he was shown how the villains are often your best friends, on the other side, and that's definitely him. I mean, the day I submitted my book, I hadn't talked to him in 6 years, and that's when he called me, like within hours, and like, hey, I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but you were right. I've been on this spiritual journey, and something of my intuitive friends said something about us writing a book together, and I'm like, yeah, I just submitted it, and you're the villain in my hero's journey tale. And now he runs the biggest weed farm in the world and is my biggest supporter and ally, and so it's like this full redemption story, and so, but that's been hard for me. A lot of my best friends are like super successful and have, I was always like, oh, I'll be the most successful out of all of us, obviously, and then they've attained to these levels where it's like I've had these near misses and things, and yet I'm the ultimate wealth is health and friends and family and loved ones, and and I mean, I live in an incredible place, like, so it's like learning that's truly understanding wealth and power is, looking at it through that lens. So I've really had quite a dance with power and abundance.
Oh, wow. Wow. Thank you so much for speaking into that, because there's just so much there that we could dive into, truthfully.
Mm,
Firstly, have no surprise that you have always felt that sense of like, I'm here to be successful, I'm here to be wealthy. It's very much your birthright in this lifetime to be that. However, you've also put in a significant amount of polarity into your soul contract with the desire to learn through polarity in just about everything in life. You know, what is good, bad, light, dark, beautiful, ugly, everything in between. Um, because of your wisdom and this very old soul that you have, the way I guess to describe this experience is almost like you're here to reconcile knowing both sides of the
mm,
coin in most areas of life, you know, knowing what it's like to be poor and to be wealthy, or to be, you know,
yep,
beautiful and ugly and good and bad and light and dark, and experiencing it through others but also through your own experience to come into a place of acceptance. And
mm,
that's where true wisdom is, right? That's the real teachers that we're drawn to, as the ones that have been there and experienced it all and journeyed it all. And you really have encoded your contract with significant polarity, a lot of
mm,
power, and therefore attracting power plays, and choosing to accept and step into your own personal power, but using it in a balanced way to serve ultimately. And that's how you use power in a balanced way, because when it's, you know, to achieve success or certain things, that's misusing, that's destructive, it's manipulative. Or when you're not sharing it, you're giving it away, you're outsourcing, you're, you know, you're making yourself small, you're not stepping into the light. And so it's dancing between those two and coming to a place where you're in that self-belief, in that inner knowing, and you are serving from that place of pure compassion from your heart. And that is the journey. And coming there and maintaining that isn't easy, because this is like a very intense desire. And it's easy to kind of go in and out. It can be easy to feel very catalytic and penetrative. So you give it away. And it can be easy to have a lot of it and have so much to say and just go, have all of my power. And that again is imbalanced. And that's where that dance
mm-hmm.
comes from. Yeah. Um, it's really beautiful too, because with your particular chart, essentially the power is represented by the number 9, and power comes with tremendous responsibility. And I often say that those with the most responsibility in a lifetime are in the most uncomfortable experience. Like, responsibility to hold as a human being feels really uncomfortable. It's like this simmering beneath the surface. And often, what your soul will do when you come here with tremendous power and tremendous responsibility is it will place what I call like red tape experiences within your
Mm,
life, obstacles, moments of self sabotage, moments of doubt, moments where you just get a flat out no, or things are taken from you, as little invitations to kind of check in with your use of power, to check in with your anchor, to check in how you are relating and expressing yourself into the world, and to come back into that balanced use of power. So I'm sure,
mm,
although they were incredibly uncomfortable, when you've hit those moments of red tape, what they've done is they've brought you back to your heart and brought you back to your center and to your sense of
yeah.
purpose and sense of self, and rebalanced
Mm-hmm.
any misuse or imbalanced use of power. And at a higher level, this sounds fabulous, right? Because it keeps that power in check. But as we are here as a human, it's like, oh, not again, not more red tape. Here we go, backwards again. And it just feels like this dance, this in and out, this ebb and flow of this experience and relationship with power.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I so relate to all of it, and it's intense. It's intense to, and I guess everyone deals with it in different to some degree as well. I'm curious. Well, I guess is there anything else regarding my chart, and then we can move on to like some other questions that I have that are more high level. But is there anything else in particular that came up that you would care to share?
Let's talk about your purpose.
Okay. All right. Twist my arm.
So your core frequency, okay, is 10-1, which is the highest frequency energy in the entire soul contract system. It really is source in form, source here on earth. And the thing with the 10-1 and what can be most challenging is, for someone like you can feel like you are on purpose, but it's very unclear as to what that is, because it's incredibly versatile. Now, the 10-1 is pure service frequency. It is not at all self-serving. And actually, when it's self-serving and when you're trying to use your service frequency to serve yourself and your ego, it comes through really distorted. It's almost like a
Mm-hmm.
radio that's like not in tune. Yeah. And so it
Get
can
it.
be really confusing and disorientating. And what the 10 ones have to come into a place of acceptance around is the fact that for you, your purpose is truly just to serve. And that is going to evolve and deepen and change just as you do in this lifetime. However, your goal in life is to ultimately surrender to this purpose of serving, and your
Mm.
impact can vary tremendously. It can look like going to the coffee shop in the morning and seeing a stranger and feeling called to sit with them and ask them how they are, and that conversation initiate a significant life change off the back of it for that person. Or it could look like standing on a stage in front of thousands of people and speaking really motivational, inspirational chat and really, transforming people's lives right there and then. The 10 ones are incredibly versatile, but often the human wants to make sense of that. The human is not okay with just serving and just being kind of at service to the greater good and the higher powers that come through you. And I think we spoke about this before we started recording, but this is why for you, your brilliance is the most potent in times where you are not preparing or planning, or you
Mm.
have no way to control the situation, but someone just comes to you and goes, hey Brandon, can you give me a hand, can you help, do you have some advice? And the stuff that will come out of you, I have no doubt, is just like, whew,
It's
profound,
my highest
penetrative.
excitement doing that. Yeah, I love it.
There you go. And your purpose is to position yourself in the world, in society, and groups of people where that you're living out as much as possible, because that's what's initiating great change in others, and that is your true power. But our human
Mm.
is like, well, I can't hold on to that. There's nothing to grip onto or to master or to make sense of. And so it can be very difficult to embody. And so that comes full circle to that part about BBB and being, because truly your soul is like, come on, Brandon, just be, because you've got it. You're good. Like it's all within you. You just have to position yourself in environments to just be, to trust, and to let go, because it's all there. It's coming through you so divinely, and it will grow and evolve and change just as you do.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. It's like, um, yeah, it's what I've been doing on the podcast. Some lately, it's just like, okay, just come on, zero preparation. What's your issue? What are you dealing with? And just, or those are the things that light me up the most when I feel that I meet someone and I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to have the talk with them. Because I get lit up like, okay, here we go. And it's just like, and I can literally see and feel when it's just like, it's almost like a good virus. Like, it's like I'm putting something energetically into them, and it's like, and then a lot of times I'll see them 6 months later, a year later, and they're like, that moment we talked, like it like completely transformed my life, and so those are where, if I ever have in the moments of questioning my own worth, or oh, you could have done better, or regret, or all the things that we've talked about that is a part of what I've dealt with too. It's like, no, just that alone, if you help one person to unlock and you know change their life, and you never know. I mean, it's like, who is more important, Gandhi or Gandhi's grandmother, who raised him? So if you affect, one person, his grandmother affected one person who affects, you know countless, as an example. And speaking of him, he said, if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. And the reason I always say that holds true is because there are no others. And so, just getting into that state, and that's definitely been a dance for me, is like, chasing the money. Like, you've heard the elusive story with that. So really the project that I'm focused on next is really such a pure service path. And that's why I know it will be such a culmination of all the roles that I've played over the years: the entrepreneur, the visionary, the spiritual teacher. That it's like all of it wrapped into one. Um, Music, all the things that it's like we pick up the things along the way that we need, and then it's like, oh, let's wrap them all into a pretty bow. And so so yeah, I definitely feel like that is my highest, you know, the thing that I'm most proud of is that, just having those moments where I can be that mouthpiece, for the divine, in a sense. And it's just like just whatever's wants to come through, and it's not about me or my ego or any of that BS. It's just like this person is ready to receive whatever medicine is capable of coming through me, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting because it is vocal expression as well, the 10-1.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
very much using your voice. All your gifts are your voice, which is no surprise. But yeah, a lot of
Yeah, that's what
vocal
my gene
power.
key highest thing is like, I think this header for it is like the world wide web of words. And it's like in its shadow, I don't know if you know much about that system. Um,
A bit.
Gene keys. Yeah, it's really cool. Richard Rudd I've had on before, who kind of downloaded this whole system, and it's very poetic and beautiful and brilliant and super deep. And but there's like the shadow, the gift, and then the city, the highest expression. And the shadow of my primary gene key is using words to manipulate and get what I want. You know, but because you have such power with words, you're able to. It helps you also. You have it because you perceive so much about the ultimate nature of reality and so forth. Um, that as you go up the scale of understanding and expansion, then you start using the gift is using those words to help everyone around you. And
Mm.
then the city, the highest expression is like you become a mouthpiece for the divine. It's you're unattached to what is or isn't being said. It's complete surrender to something that you see that is all you, but also so much bigger than you simultaneously. And it's just like, I am just complete service, surrender, and just following the impulses and, being used as a tool in a sense. So, yeah, I mean, it completely aligns with the gene keys, in this regard.
Absolutely. So complementary. I mean, even human design and astrology, they're all just little pieces of the puzzle. Hey, they're very complementary for one another. It's unreal.
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, amazing. Anything else that pops out that you wanted to share that came up for you?
Oh yeah, we could go for hours. I know
Maybe
for
we
you, you're
do.
curious.
Cancel all your plans. Let's talk enough about other people. Let's talk about me.
You just wanted a reading, didn't you?
Pretty much.
No, wonderful. I relationship stuff because I know that you're curious, with
Mm.
everything kind of closing and reopening for you in the last few
Mm-hmm.
months. This goes hand in hand with everything that you're speaking into, in the sense that your soul with tremendous power by definition, or the way in which I perceive power, is the ability to initiate change. It is service. And when you have power, you have responsibility. You are here to serve. And so much of your chart, if not, I would argue all of your chart, is either power, freedom, or polarity. The P's, or freedom doesn't have a P, but you know what I mean. It was power, freedom, and polarity for
Mm-hmm.
you. And as far as
Mm-hmm.
relationships go, you are here to serve. And if anything, it feels like you are definitely towards the end of this incarnation cycle. Could be second, third, last, or last, even depending on your soul's own free
Mm.
will. But
Interesting.
your service is first and foremost, and you came here to serve and to create. And that does create this kind of sense of what humans perceive as selfishness, right? It feels like this comes first, and relationships for that reason can be quite difficult. Not only do you attract a lot of relationships or experiences within the relationship to explore the question of who am I because of that 18-9, but also you attract relationships for you to really dance with your own personal power, but also help initiate the power and catalyze others into coming into their
Mm-hmm.
own power. And so
For
your
sure.
relationships really are to open doors for people. And a lot of the time for you, in order to in order for them to walk through the doors that you're opening, through the way in which you catalyze, it involves you having to step aside, because it's all well and good
Mm-hmm.
to open a door for someone, but you can only open the door and hope that they walk through it. And often that involves for someone like you to come into someone's life, to catalyze, to open the door, to open their mind, and then to step aside and let them walk through it. And this means that for you, you will have relationships, you will explore relationships. However, your soul's intention to serve does come as a priority, and it can be really difficult for other souls that are here more so to relate and connect and to create
Mm-hmm.
that very human experience, to understand a very service focused soul like you, because that seems like the
Mm.
direction of your focus a lot of the time. Does that kind of answer a lot of your
That's why
questions
I've
around
had
that?
a lot of challenge. Yeah, that's why I've had a lot of challenge in relationship. It's like this incredible desire for freedom and, being such a love centered soul. And, I love having a relationship. But then there's the part of me that's like, oh gosh, I'm feeling caged. If I ever feel caged, like, how do I, like me and my last partner had an open relationship, but you just described it perfectly. I mean, she was like not in my community really at all. I brought her in, she became running events here, and now it's like her whole life is was catalyzed through the portal of me in this place. And now she's deeper down the rabbit hole, as deep down the rabbit hole as someone could be, living in another state, helping to facilitate you know events that are very spiritual centric with community there and yada yada. So yeah, it was very much that, like, catalyzing for her. And yeah, we had a 5-year relationship, but and then now, you know we're not together. The challenge was me feeling the struggle of freedom, and then eventually that, like, pushing it to a breaking point. And then um you know and it definitely opened the door, like you said, like, where everything in her life is transformed, and who she knows, where she lives, just everything came through the portal for the most part. And obviously she has her own gifts and talents and whatever, but it was definitely catalyzed by our relationship.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting you say freedom too, because your physical goal is 6-6, which is the frequency of creativity and freedom. And you
Mm.
feel like a caged animal when you don't have those two things, when you aren't able to creatively express yourself and you don't feel free in your life. And there is no free will here. You have to be
Yeah.
free. You have no option to kind of not have that experience. And the associated emotions for the sixes are a lot of anger and frustration. And unfortunately, for the sixes, if they feel caged, if they feel trapped, that's what comes through because they are here to freely create and express. And whether that results in imploding and burnout and exhaustion on your half, or whether that comes out in explosive outbursts, there's that kind of like discomfort that comes when you feel trapped, and it can be really hard to navigate that in relationship, having to compromise and
Mm-hmm.
meet someone where they're at, when your core value in life and what you're here to do is to feel free and to feel free to create and express yourself ultimately.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's a dance, when you get into relationship, between finding those opposing, what can be opposing forces of, like, wanting that and also wanting, so that, I guess that's a challenge for all people, and maybe some more than others, right?
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting you mentioned the heart as well, for you, and how important the heart is for you, because a lot of your journey in this life is, it's such a cliche, but moving from your head to your heart and coming from that place. Because when we're dancing with power or polarity or freedom, all of those things can easily be out of balance because of the intensity of those things and the way in which you can go so far in one direction and disregard everything else. And coming back to the heart allows you to stay balanced, allows you to be anchored in love and compassion. And that's really the key for you in remaining with that sense of self and that centeredness and that state of inner
Mm-hmm.
harmony and equanimity, where you're like, okay, I can create, I can love, I can connect from this place. And all of those other frequencies, the ones you're here to explore, are very much like, go here, do that, go over there. And it's like, can be really intense. And so coming back to the heart and out of the head is a huge part of your journey. And I know that you really value that and do that consciously when it comes to your work and the way you connect and the way you show up.
It, and it's been a real, like, conscious effort to being very of course, having a way with words, power with words, that can be a knife too. So especially in my, in the past, much younger, where it was like, oh, I just, like, completely, like, sliced that person to pieces. Like, oops, that wasn't kind. That wasn't heart centered. That was being agitated and mental. You know, like, my destiny card is king of, or actually only a few birthdays are triples. I'm like a triple king of hearts. So, like, the purest expression of, if I reach my fullest potential, it's the most loving in the deck, and heart centered, as opposed to sharp and hurtful, and which I've struggled with doing some of that in my past. Not as much these. I mean, I've really come a long way with like learning how to like tame the beast and be in my heart more. But it's been a lifelong effort to work on that and be aware.
Yeah, always a dance, hey?
Yeah, yeah. So I am. Let's see where to go from here. So what is I know one of the things that you talk about that I think is a really interesting topic is um, understanding what your true essence is. And I don't know if you saw this like recent MIT study where they supposedly could measure in some way like different emotions with some device, and they yeah, it's a really interesting thing. They said you'd probably guess what would be the most powerful emotion would be love, proper if you had a way to measure, right? And what they found was authenticity was by far the most powerful thing that you can emit, which is true essence, right? I mean, how fascinating to think if I'm being inauthentic, I am literally less powerful in the room. If I'm being authentic, they find a way to measure it like, oh, this is like 20 times more powerful than being loving because you're being your truest self. And then I saw a near death experience um, story that I loved where the guy was saying, his great great grandmother or something showed up and took him on a journey while he was on the other side, and they explained to him that the only way to actually make it to the next level to heaven, if you will, was by there's all these potentials of you of what you can or can't do, but it's the most authentic expression of you is the one that is the path that actually lets you in the door. So I thought, looking at that very physical study combined with this near death experience, and I know you talk about true essence, so I'd love to hear how it shows up for you and the importance of that.
Mm. Oh, so many ways we could talk about this. True essence is everything, right? It's like the core of your being. It's who you are. It's your authentic expression, your authentic power. And unfortunately, for most people, it's very difficult to connect and embrace and trust in that. Your true essence whispers to you. It's those soul's whispers of excitement or inspiration, or like those little nudges and those little pushes that we get when we are moving towards something that is an alignment for us, for our true essence. And we have all these limiting beliefs and societal conditioning and programming, and just like that whisper gets squished by all of these really loud voices that just push it down, 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 down until that whisper is no longer there. And it can be really hard to connect back to that whisper and to trust in it and to integrate it and to act on it. And essentially, your true essence to me is your soul contract. It represents your greatest challenges. It represents your unique gifts. Like, what is it that sets you apart? What is it that you're here to bring and express and share with the world? It represents the part of you that is here to achieve certain things, your goals. And through doing so, they're going to bring you that sense of fulfillment and excitement. And you're going to get out of bed in the morning and you're going to be excited to live. And then there's that core frequency, what is it that you're really here to do and here to embody? And through doing so, become the permission slip for others to also embody their true essence and their authenticity through
Mm-hmm.
serving or through showing up in a certain way or expressing yourself in a certain way. And it can be really hard in our world, our very low density earth down here, to really connect to that whisper when everything else is so loud. And I really truly feel like when it comes to coming back to your true essence, it's more like an unlearning. It's more like a peeling back of layers and really acknowledging those whispers and getting to know them and becoming curious about them, rather than just giving in to all of the noise and the loud voices and those telling you who you are and what you're here to do, or the conditioning or the societal
Mm-hmm.
programming that tend to really drown out that soul's whisper. And so when it comes to embodying authenticity and your authentic expression as the most magnetic and powerful frequency, it makes a lot of sense to me, because a lot of people, that is love, right? To be in your authentic expression, that is the purest form of love. And so I feel like they're one and the same in a lot of ways. But
Yeah.
it's the most
Yeah. Yeah.
magnetic thing to see someone in their authenticity, to be stepping into something that only they could do, an accumulation of all of their gifts and their skills and their experiences. And I feel like a lot of what we're here to do in this life is to come back to that and to embody that, to explore that, and then to consciously express that out into the world and share it with society.
Yeah. What would you say to someone listening who it's like, okay, I'm still trying to figure out what my true essence is. And how does that play in, obviously, with your life purpose, right? I mean, they're kind of go hand in hand, right? If you're being your true, most authentic self, your life purpose probably reveals itself. Or we all know people who are like, what is my purpose? What is your advice to someone who's in that position currently?
In most cases, I would say that excitement is your assignment, in the sense that what are you excited about
Mm,
and how can
I
you
like that.
explore that? What is it that you are happy and excited to talk about, for hours and hours? What is it that when someone asks you a question about, do you get really excited and get goosebumps, or, get that moment of like, oh, let me tell you about this, and lean into that a little bit. And it may not be, for you, it's making poetry. Maybe, that may not be the end goal, but it's going to open the doors, and really that will be the breadcrumbs to get you into understanding what is it that your soul is wanting to explore. Because we don't come here with no roadmap. Like you said at the very start,
Mm,
there's codes and guidance in everything, but a lot of us just don't ask, and we're not curious, and we don't explore just subtleties and, sensitivities and sensations. We just kind of dismiss them as no big deal because everything else is so loud. And it's the more you get curious about those
yeah.
subtleties and the signs and the sensations, the more you lean into what makes you excited, the more you're able to navigate the things that are for you and not for you. And before long, you'll have that clear sense of direction.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think it's really important too. I think people can get caught up like, oh, I don't see, okay, I'm excited talking about this particular thing or topic, and I don't see the path how I'm going to maybe, support myself with it or what have you. And I think it's really important, like part of the recipe, if you will, is trusting that, like, in perfect divine timing, what's for you will always be for you. It will be shown as long as you're not in the way of. I think a lot of times we get in the way with the story of like, oh, I don't see, you know, 10 steps ahead. I only know I like this thing. And it's like, and then you get so in your head about it, and it then prevents you from actually unlocking, like, oh, hold on, I can continue to do it in this way. I can find this creative path to expressing and supporting myself or whatever it is. And I think that's a really important piece for people, is to like really tap into the trust prior to seeing it realized, and be it to see it, right? And it's a challenge for all of us, and that I think we all have to face down. Would you agree with that?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the greatest way to kind of approach it is, instead of approaching it from that doing and trying to make it happen, it's like it's almost rigid. It doesn't feel very effortless. It's like, how can you create space for more of it in your life? So if something excites you, how can you
Mm-hmm.
create space for more of it in your life? And maybe don't look at it as like,
Yeah.
how do I turn this into a career, or how do I make this into something that
Right.
I can make money from? That would be wonderful. And if you can see that path and it's clear to you and you have the courage to jump into it, then go for it, by all means. But for a lot of people, that feels like such a leap, and it's scary and it doesn't look sustainable. And you want to be able to nurture and sustain something that you love. You don't want to jump into it and not be able to hold it. You don't want it to slip through your fingers. And so just ask yourself, how can I create more space in my life to explore this a little bit more? How can I be a little bit more creative? And how can I open up a little bit more space in my life to really get curious as to why I feel the way that I do about this, and to, see what avenues or what roads and options this opens up for me when I start to pay more attention to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a very good point, because then if you start trying to like, what I think about when you say that is when I was in a band many years ago, and at first it was like the most fun I'd ever had in my life. The creative process and the expression of it, and you know, yeah. I mean, I just look back on those early years with my band and how much joy just in the act of doing it, right? And then I looked towards the end, and our bass player's brother was the drummer in No Doubt, if you know that band. And we played with all these big bands at the time, and then it became like, oh, we've got to make it. We've got to get somewhere else, or we're failures. And then so it went. The early years were the most joyous, creative, expressive. Later years were, we've got to get somewhere else, or there's a problem. And although I understand the why we wanted to get somewhere else, it's like by making that the aim, it's like, I think what I really get from even just this conversation is like, do the thing that you love without the attachment to what it's going to, you may turn out to be, the biggest artist in the world. Great. That's a bonus to doing what you love. But if that's your path, if that's in your soul contract, that's going to unfold. And if not, you don't need it to happen to be fulfilled. You can enjoy the thing, either way. And knowing that, as far as the supporting yourself, I think a lot of times gets mixed up in this creative process. Is like, the supporting thing will show its way, whether it's through that or not. But don't let it, don't let thinking about, like you said, just monetizing it or whatever, get in the way of the actual joy of the thing. Because it's like the joy thief when you
Mm.
do that. I know.
Absolutely. No, it truly is. And the beautiful thing about the soul contract, right, is when we look at your core frequency, it's the sum total of all other six soul energies. So your karma, your talents, and your goals, both physically and spiritually. Your purpose in this lifetime is all of them and the sum total of all of them. And so for most people, it's a state of being. It's not necessarily a certain career that they're here to pursue or a certain thing that they're supposed to
Mm,
do, although that can absolutely be a part of it. But it's a state of being. And we can get so caught up in waiting for that aha moment or that one idea or that one project that we're here to explore and to make our life's purpose and to, make a living from, that we end up being really rigid and we get stuck in waiting. And it really becomes this very stagnant experience of just one day after the other just passing by and not thinking too much of it. When you start to shift your focus on it, well, how can I cultivate a state of inner harmony, of equanimity, of spaciousness in my life?
mm,
Where I can be curious and explore and create and express more and more in all the different areas of my life? That's when things start to unfold for you, and that's when you start to create things and follow through with
mm,
ideas and explore things that inspire you, that start to create those stepping stones for what it is that you're here to do. And I often say that the universe is never going to gift you the project that is your life's work if it can't trust, or you can't even trust in yourself to nurture it, to water it, to sustain
mm,
it. And so instead of focusing on getting the one aha moment and the project that's your life's work, focus on cultivating a life where you can really truly nurture it and sustain it had you been given it. And how can you create the space for it now so that when it comes to you, you can truly see it through? Because we can be so full in that analysis paralysis and so stuck and rigid that even if you had the idea one day that was your life's work, where's it to go? Can you plug it in and play it right now? Because often people can't. And they don't
mhm,
think about that because they're waiting for the idea and they're all up in their head. But it's more so about how can you cultivate that space, that harmony, that equanimity in your life so
mhm.
that when it comes, you can really truly sustain it.
Create the right, environment, fertile ground, so that it can birth in divine timing, right?
Mm. And it's never linear too. I've spoken a couple of times about my journey in soul contract reading. I jumped into my business initially the minute I started learning this system. I did a bit of study and I started reading straight away because I was obsessed with it. But my life was out of alignment. I was in a relationship that wasn't in alignment with me, and I was doing relationship readings, so I was out of integrity there. And I was honestly like
Hmm.
depressed. I was going back to bed after doing my readings. My readings would make me feel alive. And then I was going back to bed to sleep for the rest of the day until I had another client. I was so out of alignment, living in a place, in a location, in a relationship that just wasn't for me. And I realized, well, I can't sustain this. I know this is my life's work. I've got the system. I can see what direction I'm here to go in this lifetime. And even with that knowing, even with that aha moment, even with knowing exactly what I'm here to do and how I'm here to do it, the universe was like, you need to build a foundation where you can sustain this, and that should be your priority. And so I had to
Mm,
step away for a couple of years
mm,
and really go back to basics and create a life physically that could sustain my spiritual work. And now I have the capacity for it. Now I can
mm.
nurture it. Now I
Wow.
can grow it.
Mm,
Even though, 5 years ago, I knew what I was here to do and I had that moment of this is my purpose, I still had to prioritize my foundation and prioritize the the like the structure of my life, the systems, and the way in which I was showing up each and every day, so I could nurture it and so I could sustain it as my life purpose.
mm. Really create the fertile grounds, get in your authentic expression, make sure all of your relationships are of true reflection. And yeah, we've just got to like clean up our vibration everywhere in order to be our greatest and grandest self, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Get back to basics and stripping back all the
Yeah.
layers of all the conditioning and the programming.
I love that. Wow. Wow. We've been at it a little while. I didn't realize how, um, I feel like we could go on and on. As we sort of wind down here, one of the things that I love to always ask is a story of serendipity, synchronicity, positive paranormal story. It's like my go-to. I ask every guest. So I'm curious if you, and I usually, by the way, give some forewarning at the front of the episode, like, hey, think about this throughout. And I forgot to do that with you. So if I stumped you, I mean, I actually have a little bit of a story to share too, but I'll ask you first if there's something fun that comes to mind.
Hmm. I think for me, my greatest moment of, I guess, I don't even know what you would call it, understanding that there's something greater than was when I was 17, I fell down a waterfall and I had a near death experience. And that time really pulled me out of my body and I felt
Mm,
what the other side felt like. I felt the love, the warmth, the this homecoming sensation. And I've spent a lot of my life since then. Initially, I was trying to get there through all forms of escapism and all forms of detachment and being very ungrounded. I've ever since started to more so embrace being here and embracing the physical experience as part of my lesson here. However, I have been gifted with what I call life reviews. So, whether it's my spirit team or whether it's my higher self, over the last maybe 4 years, every 6 months or so, I experience a bit of a life review. And in my dream,
really? Wow.
yeah, in my dream, I kind of go up
Wow.
and it's really weird. It's like I have different people in my life and I learn a lot about
You
who I
give
am.
regular life reviews. I've never heard of that. That's fucking awesome.
Well, I've had three over the last maybe 4 years.
Mm,
So, um,
wow.
and I learn a lot about who I am in my reflection in others. So, my relationships for me are a huge part of my journey in this lifetime. And so, my life reviews often
Hmm.
revolve around my relationships. And I get this opportunity to speak
Hmm.
to the people closest to me, their highest selves, in kind of a check in where they're at, where I'm at. And it gives me kind of a check in to where I'm at in my journey, my purpose, and they're always such a weird experience and it takes some time to really integrate them because often my human just dismisses them and then I start to kind of remember segments of it all. But I think it's such a gift that that's something that I get to experience. And I don't know if it's going to be something that continues, but it always just closes a chapter for me. I also have those 18 nines in my soul contract. So I'm also very nostalgic and I
Oh, wow.
also am visiting people or places to kind of close those chapters. And so these life reviews are a really beautiful way for me to kind of check in, close certain chapters, and just check in where I'm at in this lifetime. So I'd say that's probably my
Hmm.
favorite experience in
Yeah.
that regard.
Do you wake up like, wow, I just got to like, it's like you're cheating a little bit, right? You get like this higher self vision, because that's really what life reviews typically is. You're seeing it through the lens of and how you impacted others, right? Is that part of your experience? Like you're feeling what the other felt on the other end of whatever your action was, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's very much just a check-in with where that relationship is, whether it's something that is closed off or whether
Mm-hmm.
it's something that is continuing on. And yeah, it's just like a very pure conversation with my higher self, with their higher self, and just kind of getting straight to the core,
Mm.
because of course our human gets in the way of that in real time, in the sense that often there are emotions involved and there's an ego involved, and it can be really difficult to kind of explore the experience from that very pure place. And essentially, these reviews for me have
Mm-hmm.
allowed me to do that and find closure where I otherwise wasn't going to get the closure. So it's been deeply healing, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
very grateful for
Mm-hmm.
it.
Wow. Wow. Very cool. I've never heard of anyone who has regular life reviews without a near death experience. So that's awesome. Um, well, so something pretty synchronistic. Definitely like some dream. Speaking of dream time communications, I have a question for you first. Did do you ever, when you're looking at someone's soul contract, see anything about their like future pertaining to like, oh, you're gonna have a child or some any sort of like psychic perceptions that come through for you ever?
Sometimes, if they've got specific intentions around what it is that they're hoping to understand, then I'll explore it. I don't like to play like God though, so I
Mm-hmm.
often stay out of, giving them clear truths around things like that, because you can really influence their timelines, and there are multiple timelines playing out simultaneously.
Totally.
When it comes to having children, it is
Sure.
often a part within someone's soul contract, especially if they have an unplanned child. It's often a lesson in giving and receiving unconditional love that they're here to explore. And so I had one client a couple of years ago actually, where I mentioned to her, I was like, look, babe, you have unplanned pregnancy here, and this may be a part of your experience. And she was a friend of a friend, so I could speak to her like this. And I was like, just be careful,
Mm-hmm.
just be. I knew she was in a very rocky place, wasn't very stable with her partner, and they were just a lot of moving through a lot of pieces. But they conceived that night. And
Wow.
yeah. And she's
Wow.
like, what have you done? But so grateful, and it brought them
Yeah.
together, and it's been the most beautiful
Yeah.
experience for her and her partner. But it was a really funny thing, and that was pretty early on. This is probably 4 years ago now, I would say, and that really taught me a lesson of like, okay, just there's a
Mm.
lot of power that comes with this particular
Responsibility.
modality,
Yeah.
a lot of responsibility. And so now I'm not really one to, if I'm completely honest with you and completely vulnerable, when I was first started reading, I was really tapping into that. I would try and predict and try and like, uh, I, here we go. This is being really, really vulnerable, because I'd found
Bring it.
something that felt like me. Because it had felt like me, and because it was something that felt true to me for the first time ever, there was a part of my ego that used to get a kick out of sitting down for a reading with someone and getting those moments of like, oh, you've got me, or like being able to predict who they are and being able to predict specifics in their life. And so I would try and tap into that and do the whole psychic thing, where that's not really my gift. And it worked for a bit, but I realized that very similar to you, in the sense that my gifts come through when I'm in my heart, when I'm just purely showing up from a place of give me what they need to hear. And that's when, the readings tend to be the most potent. When I was trying to control that and predict, and my ego
Mm.
was like, how can I like get this person to, really validate my
Yeah.
skills here, things got really messy, and the universe gave me
Yeah.
some good lessons in like, don't do that. Like, why are
Mm.
you trying to predict this person's experience when that's not your skill set? That's not what you're here to do. You're here to support them and guide them. And that was a huge piece of me
Mm.
stepping away after those first 2 years, was really coming back to myself and coming back to my intention, and noticing there was a part of my ego that was seeking validation through my gifts and being able to read. And so I really have to keep that in check, and I'm very conscious of it now. And every single reading I just pray, and I sent out to the universe like, give me what they need to hear. I've I really am truly, the system is my language. So there's nothing that, uh, if I pull up a chart, I can interpret it like it's something that I've studied. And so what I focus on now is more so to create space for what wants to come through in that moment from a place of being anchored in
Mm-hmm.
compassion, in service, in very much that intention of give me what they need to hear, as opposed to trying to like validate myself in some way.
For
So just
something.
noticing
Yeah.
that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, for me, I'll have, prophetic dreams sometimes, psychic stuff in that way, but it's never whatever come or something comes up for me really strongly, but I'm never seeking it. It just like comes to me. And
Mm.
so I asked about the child thing because I'll give you a little backstory. So, um, me and my partner, years ago, as I mentioned, we had an open relationship, but it was, I mean, it's not like we were like super open. We were definitely having a monogamous streak, but we did have an open element to our relationship. And I connected with someone who's definitely some intense karmic stuff with. And my former partner, after it happened, had a vision of this woman in a past life stabbing her when she was pregnant with our child and her losing the baby. And when she was processing this, she was in our tub and the tub cracked. This tub, it took 6 guys to carry it out of the house. It's so heavy. So it's definitely something to it, right? And then that was like years ago. And then we broke up end of August. First, she left mid September from living, with me. But she did and that happened many years ago. But then she did a sort of a 3-day workshop with a friend, and towards the end of it, they did this whole ritualistic, guided meditation thing, and she was the subject. And unexpectedly, all this stuff came up where she like literally let this, what she said, 5,000-year-old child of ours go into the river, and it was like releasing our karmic cycle was complete. And that's when she, after we'd come close to the last year was pretty rocky, and she decided like, oh, we need to like, it's time for us to split, based off of this vision that she had around this child, letting this child go. Well, then, in the months that came after, I started having a lot of my own sort of psychic intuitive stuff and messages around having another child, which I never really thought. I do have a son now, but a daughter, and like what the name would be, and all this like, like synchronistic stuff around it. And um, so yeah, so that's just to kind of set the stage for this dream that was recounted to me a few days ago. And of course, with dreams too, it can be like very symbolic. And I'm birthing right now a project that, I mean, I started, really the inception of it was 2006. I did a first version of it in 2009. Now I've been guided in dramatic fashion to bring it back. So it's, there's definitely a birthing happening in my life now. So, I definitely think in terms of that too, right? But my friend comes up to me. We do every 3 months or so, we do a big, like, kind of, we call them mini festivals, here at my property, where it'll be workshops and vendors and DJs and the whole thing. And we did one this last Saturday, and my friend Crystal was in town from Vegas, and she came up to me. She goes, "Brandon, I have to share with you. She had told me this in the past. She goes, I sometimes have these like really intense prophetic or intuitive dreams, and she's like, and I had one with you the other night, and it was like the most intense one that one of the most intense and beautiful ones that I've ever had. Okay, tell me, And she's like, well, me, you, and another woman were in a like hospital kind of thing, and we're looking at an ultrasound of a baby. And so I instantly think about my own baby thing, but also, once again, this big project, which is actually in my field right now. I don't think I'm pregnant anywhere, but so she's like, we're looking at this child, and And then also she goes, dreams can be kind of jumpy, but then there was all of a sudden a thing about a miscarriage. And so there was the baby, then there was something about a miscarriage, but then all of a sudden we were celebrating at an event, it jumped to that. And she's like, this guy is walking up to me and I'm like, whoa, he looks so cool and whatever. And then he took his hood off and it was you. And he's like, you were in this super celebratory mode. It was almost like your higher self and you were dancing and, and she goes, and the one thing I had to get up and like write down, they kept screaming a name to me. You got to make sure he remembers the name Charlie, 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 Charlie. And so I need to know, do you know someone named Charlie? And I didn't. I'm like, no, I don't. I'm trying to think like Charlie, Charlie. And then I'm like, hold on. I'm interviewing this girl, Charlotte. Here, I remember that, but I'm like, ChatGPT, what's a nickname for Charlotte? Charlie. And then you post 2 days later about your podcast, which I didn't even know was coming out. And in it, you share how you took the nickname Charlie. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to hear something about this project being birthed or this child that So that's why I was curious, if anything like that came up, because obviously that for me, it was like, wow, what a trippy thing. Like, and even since then, even funny, like right before we got on this call, I'm part of this like tennis club thing, and someone messages me that I need to play that I don't know. It was like moments before we got on, and it's like someone named Charlie messages me randomly on my WhatsApp. So it'll be like reflections of the things in my life all the time. So I don't know, what the symbology is there. I'm thinking, with the miscarriage thing, it has to do possibly with what happened with my ex and her releasing that. And then me having a vision of having a future child, but it also could just be this project being born and then you and I having this conversation now. So that's why I asked, because I didn't know if there's anything that you perceive around that or what have you. But yeah, so that's my little synchronicity story that when I saw you post that was your nickname, I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting. And yeah, I was Charlie for pretty much my whole life up until last year, really. So I didn't go by Charlotte whatsoever. You do have the
Do you have a
fertility
child or
frequency.
anything or no?
No, I don't. But you do have the fertility frequency as your physical talent. The same frequency I was just talking about that can manifest as unplanned pregnancy, but it also can
Mm-hmm.
manifest as polarity with fertility. Fertility meaning creation, fertility meaning abundance, wealth. Like it's all very much the
Mm-hmm.
same energy. And the
Right.
22-4, which is your physical talent, is very much about creating and birthing something significant into existence. It often
Mm.
involves a merging of the mind, body, and spirit, and it's a birthing of the combination of those three parts of you, and the integration
Mhm.
of mind, body, spirit. But also, absolutely, as far as the fertility frequency, that is something that does run really strong in your essence. And it can mean physical
Mm.
fertility and very much having children. So I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not surprised at all to hear that you've got a child. I mean, I'd be quite surprised if you didn't have a child in this lifetime. However, I could see for you that that could come through in many ways, and I think it could absolutely be the birthing of a creation, but it also can very
Right.
much be the invitation of having another child in this lifetime as well. So that fertility frequency is really strong within your chart.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. What a trip. It's such a like, yeah, like I said, when she even came up, she goes, it was like, I literally had to write it down because I wanted to make sure I did not forget that name. And, and she was telling me that, she's uh, actually, she just was messaging me about this because I was asking her more about it because it was at the event and I didn't hear all the details. So I asked her more earlier because I wanted to share it. And she said, yeah, it happened to her she's actually married to someone and she's married to someone who she didn't ever anticipate of the same sex happening. And so, she said she can ask, this is a really cool gift. She can ask before she sleeps to be shown something. And a lot of times she will. And she had asked, who's my, soulmate or whatever. And the name came through who she ended up like marrying, years later. But so I guess she's had naming things before. So she knew, like, she even's like, I couldn't remember if that was maybe your son's name. I didn't know. So it took me a minute. I was kind of surprised that I even remembered, like, well, hold on, who in my field right now? And I'm like, oh, that could be, a nickname for you. And then you started talking about that being your nickname, and
Yeah.
like, wow, what a trip.
Wow, it's
It's all
really
reflection.
all reflection. And one of the things like that I when I was sitting with your chart earlier that I felt called to share was because a lot of your frequencies are power, right? Power is the your dominant vibration in this lifetime. And when it comes to someone like you with a chart like yours, there is no one with knowledge or words or expertise or gifts that will be able to sit here and tell you who you are and what you're here to experience and what you're here to do. Because so much of your life journey is about reclaiming your power and trusting in your inner knowing, and listening to someone else tell you who you are and what you're here to do and what you're here to experience is you very much giving your power away to them and taking on their truth
Right.
as your own. And so it's actually quite difficult to read like charts like yours very specifically, because I could sit here and I could tell you things about yourself and I could be like really specific in nature, but I know who you are as an individual. There'll be a part of you that's like, that's not my journey. I'm not meant to receive information like that in that way. And so it's really interesting because when I sit with charts like yours with tremendous power within them, then my experience of receiving messages is very much like they know but and so instead of it just being like here's the message for them to be to receive in the reading, everything comes through with this flavor of like they already know this but here it is, or they already know this but direct them in this way. And so everything that you feel, your journey in this life is coming back to that inner knowing and coming back to, trusting in those breadcrumbs as opposed to receiving the answers from outside of you. And I always find it so interesting how it's like always like it's like that dangling carrot, like you were saying. It's like it's always just there, but no one can bring that carrot to you except yourself.
Yeah,
And it's
that's
frustrating. I
right.
could only imagine.
Yeah, and it's such a great point too, though, because I take everything, like, I love, synchronicity and psychic accounts and dream things. I have had some really cool dream stuff come through and introduced to spirit across the veil that ended up being very validated. And I take all of it with, like, I try and take it with a grain of salt, like, because if you start giving all your power to, that, then who are you? Right. And you then become, yeah, you really disempower yourself. So I think it's really important to find a balance of, like, wow, isn't this fun and cool and interesting, and let it go, like it doesn't. And so that's something that I've definitely learned, is my dance with all this sort of magical phenomenon, if you will.
Yeah.
Wow, well, this has
Such a
been
dance,
awesome,
hey?
Charlotte. We've kind of Such a dance. I have enjoyed dancing with you today. And I guess, what is the best way for people who want to connect with you, follow your work, your new podcast? Big congratulations, by the way. Yeah, if you would just share all of that.
Yeah, thank you so much. You can find me at charlottemilda.com. I'm charlottemilda underscore soul architect on Instagram. And my podcast is The Soul Architect on wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Cool. Amazing. I'll put a link to find Charlotte, and any other thing that bubbles up for you that you want to share. Um, yeah, like last words, thoughts to share with the audience.
Last words. I think one thing that I've learnt when it comes to reading contracts is that we are all wildly unique and individual. And I think if there's one message or something that I would encourage each and every one of you to explore is just what does that look like for you? Because that's the answer, right? That's the answer to the question. And I think the more you lean into your individuality, that is how you are able to reclaim your authentic power and build that unshakable confidence in who you are and what you're here to do. And Really truly understanding that we're all super individual and there is no one more qualified than you with your unique gifts and life experiences to do
Mm,
exactly what you came here to do. And the more you can lean into that
mm,
and
mm,
trust in that and grab a hold
mm,
of that, that's how you reconnect with your essence and your authenticity and ultimately your soul contract.
I love that. Yeah. You're unique just like everyone else. And you're as worthy as any other soul ever has been, could be, or will be. Like literally the essence of source is you are it. Like it's so important to you. People get so caught up in the comparison game and all that stuff. And it's like there is no soul that has ever been more worthy than you are. It's just a matter of you claiming that, you know, that
Absolutely. And
that power, right?
timelines,
The truth.
oh, so right. And the timelines, honestly, everyone's timeline is so different. And we live in a world where we're so used to seeing people, achieve significant success at such an early age. But when it comes to your soul contract, there are so many nuances to that. And sometimes those that are here to have a significant impact on the world, they need to establish themselves within society and to really do something that is totally out of alignment for a long period of time to get to the place of like having that resiliency and having that understanding of what it's like to work as a human being on earth before they start to explore something maybe more spiritual in
Yeah.
nature that feels more like their soul's calling. So there is no same timeline. Everyone's is unique. And often the bigger contribution, the more impactful their life, often the longer and more patient they have to be.
Hmm. Well said. Well, I am thoroughly grateful that you made it into my timeline this time around. It has been such a pleasure connecting with you. And yeah, all of you out there for tuning in your beautiful brainwaves and incredible hearts to this episode. Until next time, journey well.
Thank you for having me, Brandon.